would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitely, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please don't hold that against me. Welcome to it yet again, folks. If you'd like to get in contact with me, head on over to therebelbroker.com. You can send along a message, or you can click on the big red button at the top of the page that says take the survey to support the show. You have the same email address both times that you're asked. Answer a handful of questions. Not only will you be helping out the show, but you will also be putting yourself in the running to win a $50 Amazon gift card. We've already given out 200 buckaroos so far. Another 50 is going to go out in February. So get your name in the hat so that you might just find yourself $50 richer in the wide, wonderful world of Amazon. Now, also, it's about to start. The folks in the Rebel Underground are finally going to see some content specifically for them coming out very, very soon. So if you'd like to be a part of that fabulous group, just text the word Rebel Broker, the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. Or you can also accomplish this at the website at www.therebelbroker.com. Once you get to the website, a pop-up will automatically show up asking you to join the Rebel Underground. Do it there. You end up on the same list. We've got some content coming out on sort of the process I walk through when I am evaluating different metro areas, different cities from a distance to figure out where I might want to focus my search. I know I've been working on this for a while. Folks have been hearing me talk about it for a while. I've had a couple of aborted attempts where we had technical problems where the audio wasn't coming out right or the video part wasn't working. Some work started on that over the weekend. I was hoping to have that done actually by Monday this week, but I only got about probably 20% of the raw footage I need to actually put this all together. It's turning out to be a much bigger task than I had anticipated, but thank you for your patience, and that will be coming out exclusively for Rebel Underground folks to start, and then probably for the first month it'll just be available to you, and then it will become available to everyone over on YouTube. So if you want to jump in and take advantage of that, now is the time to do it. And I think that is it. I know yesterday I mentioned I wasn't feeling so hot. Things are a little bit worse today, but still manageable. My voice might go in and out a little bit as we go through. I am fully stocked on lozenges and whatnot to keep things going. So hopefully we'll be able to plow right through. Anything else super interesting in the housekeeping department? I don't think so. I think we're good. Couple of interesting things to talk about today. I guess a lot of this is going to be sort of talking to folks who are looking to take action now on their properties. We're going to look at interest rates. The first headline that jumped out at me to include in today's show came to me from Housing Wire. And that headline was Freddie Mac, mortgage rates hit third straight week of declines. So mortgage rates are continuing to go down. We have absolutely called it here. I think at this point we can I can do the pat myself on the back thing because we saw what I told you we'd see. After the increase in the 0.25% interest rate increase from the Fed, we saw that initial uncertainty response where interest rates went up a bit and then they started going back down. But here's the other thing that's interesting. Over the last, 4, maybe 5 years, we've seen the start of the quote-unquote season getting earlier. It kind of fell into the same area chronologically over the last couple of years. February, March, as early as that, we were seeing. May continues to be pretty much the hot month here in my marketplace in terms of what sellers tend to get. And for those of you who are potentially looking to sell, whether you are someone who's lived in a home for a long time and you're looking to get that place sold, or maybe you're someone doing a flip, we're finding things being very different than in past years, where you could look at getting the peak amount you could hope for more into the summer months. And that's not so much the case in a lot of areas. So the first bit of truth to take away from this observation relating to getting your home sold is to figure out in what month are you finding that homes on average are selling for the highest amount of money. Because that's when you want to sell, right? You want to be in there to take advantage of when things are at their best for you. Now, if you're someone who already owns a property that you live in, that's absolutely something you can take advantage of. If you're someone who is an investor and you've kind of reached the point where you'd like to liquidate that investment, maybe you've been renting it for 4 or 5 years, and you're to the point now where you'd like to pull the equity out, move it into some other investments, or maybe you're going to move it into something else. Maybe now is the time to figure out when that peak month is and take advantage of that so that you can plan for it. I know in my case, my personal sale, I'm absolutely shooting for May, which was the number one month for home sellers last year. Not June, not July, not August, not any of those months that are so frequently associated with being the peak, but May. So take advantage of that if you can in your own strategies. Now, here are the folks who are a little bit of a disadvantage. You can never tell when those great flipping opportunities are going to come along. And if you're someone who's doing it all year long, maybe you're trying to calculate the peak times to do X, Y, and Z, but frequently that's not going to be what's going to happen for you. You're going to be the person who finds the right deal, may not happen at the exact right moment, but you'll be able to, because of the way you're acquiring. Remember, if you're acquiring at not a peak month, then it's not like you're paying the top. But that's a number to keep in mind as well. So even if you're a flipper, in the markets where you're doing this, it is a great idea to know what are the peak months, because you may want to be a little bit more guarded in your willingness to potentially bid up a property that you want to flip. In those months when things are at their hottest, it would stink for you to sort of have the market work against you, meaning you've purchased it, you entered into contract in that month when things are at their peak, and you're probably not going to be able to sell it, depending on how you've purchased it. If you bought it all cash, you can sell it however you like. You can do whatever you want. If there are loans involved, there's likely to be delays that are going to have to play a part. But you don't want to buy it when things are at their peak and then sell when things are naturally working against you. And of course, the local reality, the real truth on the ground is what's going to affect you in terms of what that number equals. There are some markets here where things are still going kind of nuts. So it's good to have this idea that the momentum of the market is carrying value for you. In some markets that I'm in, it's less about a home being worth less in a following month and simply just a less robust increase in value. So if I'm doing the math here, for instance, I would be a little bit less worried about it. I wouldn't want to buy when things are absolutely at their top. But the reality is that simply means that, okay, so I might sell a little bit faster. I might sell for a slightly higher price, but that's really just the percent increase from month to month that's tending to show slowing down, right? In the markets where things are more flat, that's obviously going to become more of an issue. And in areas where things might even be in a little bit of decline, and we've covered markets like that. We've talked about markets over the last year that have fallen into that category where they are at a point where there are some declines, and then you have to try to figure out what is the nature of that decline. Is this something that's just an opportunity for you to get something at a better price? Or is this a trend that's going to last over the longer haul? One way, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this, but one way I kind of mitigate that data is to see what rents are doing. If rents aren't going down, then more power to you. I say jump into a market like that where you continue to get good rents and prices have gone down a little bit. But in any event, so we initially started this conversation referring to Freddie Mac and mortgage rates hitting their third straight week of declines. However, one interesting thing to note is that 10-year treasuries did tick up a bit. And remember, that's what we use as our guide in terms of anticipating where lending rates are going to go. They bear a far greater relationship with treasury notes, 10-year treasuries, than they do with what the Fed does with interest rates. According to this article, mortgage rates dropped for the third week in a row after rising significantly after President-elect Donald Trump won the election. However, the 10-year Treasury did see an increase. Quote, After trending down for most of the week, the 10-year Treasury yield rose following the release of the CPI report, Freddie Mac chief economist Sean Bicchetti said. Let me go ahead and run down for you. And I'm still not seeing anything that indicates there should be a panic mode, that anyone should be ridiculously worried about interest rates. But let's do a quick review of where we stand on interest rates. Now, overall, we are not near the 52-week lows. We are still in the top half and in many cases the top third or top quarter of the 52-week values. I'll include a link to Mortgage News Daily, their page that kind of summarizes what interest rates are doing. But there's still nothing here that is obscene to me. There's nothing here that makes me worry. As a person who sometime over the next X number of months is going to purchase a property for me to live in, I'm not worried about these numbers. I feel no sense of huge urgency to jump in and make something happen right now. So let's go ahead and just review these numbers real quick. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage is currently at 4.16%. Yesterday it was at 4.25, so it's down 0.09. The 52-week low is 3.34, and the 52-week high is 4.38. So it's definitely hovering closer to the top end of that 52-week trend rather than the low or middle. The 15-year fixed rate mortgage is at 3.37. Yesterday it was at 3.45, so that's down 0.08. The 52-week low for that number is 2.69, and the 52-week high is 3.58. And I still think, given where these numbers are right now, remember there was a while there where we just weren't seeing a huge amount of distance between, say, the 15-year fixed rate mortgage and the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I think now that there's enough of a disparity between those two. It's not quite 1%, but it's getting a lot closer to it. There was a period of time there where there was only a half a point difference between the two, which was tough to fathom. But as that gap widens, as you start to see the interest rate between the 15 and 30 year continue to widen a bit, I think it makes absolutely outstanding sense to potentially entertain that if you're financially able to. And particularly for those of you that are investing later in life, depending on what your end goal is, I think a 15-year rate makes sense for someone who's starting later, just so you can potentially, and I would mean, let's say you're 15 years away from when you want to retire, you'd be in a position where all of your investments would simply be positive cash flow for you. 100% positive cash flow, aside from taxes and saving for any other stuff, right? Damage, that type of thing. I like to usually put away 10% for unforeseen stuff. But that's a great income for folks that are in those retirement years where they want to be able to sit back a little bit more and enjoy the fruits of their investments. The FHA 30-year fixed remains flat at 3.75. That's one of the ones that actually is a little bit more towards the middle of its 52-week range. 3.15 was its 52-week low. 4.10 is its 52-week high. The jumbo 30-year fixed is at 4.24, down from 4.30. So that's a change of 0.06. And that one is hovering a lot closer to the highest point in its 52-week range. It was at its lowest at 52-week stretch at 3.41. Its highest point in that 52-week stretch was 4.4. And then finally, the 5/1 adjustable rate mortgage, 2.99%. Today, it was 3.08 yesterday, 0.09% change with a range of 2.80 to 3.25. So it's actually in the lower half of the interest rate over the last 52 weeks. I think that's kind of interesting. It definitely makes it a little bit more sexy if you're someone who knows that they are not going to be staying in a property for more than 5 years. If you know that's going to happen, I think that's a great way to potentially go. But now these are all the Freddie Mac numbers, and I think they're looking good. So I don't think anyone needs to particularly panic. The other article I was covering today is a topic we've already sort of been getting into, why sellers should list early this year. We're going to go ahead and jump into that, but we're going to take a quick break right here before we do, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Welcome back, everyone. We've been talking mortgage rates and timing things so that they're good for you as a seller. We're going to get into a little bit more detail about what sort of spurred that thought for today's show. It actually came from Realtor.org, an article titled "Smart Sellers Will List Early This Year." I oftentimes have to engage the baloney filter with stuff that comes from Realtor.org. Don't get me wrong, they put out some great stuff, but whenever they have a vested interest, right, and what the perception needs to be in terms of it's going to create more business, those types of things, you need to sort of understand that, right? Well, this one is a little bit less that. It's more of a timing of things opinion rather than a doing it thing. It assumes you're already going to do it. But I thought the article was interesting because I think it makes some good points, and I think it's hitting it pretty much on the dot. So what it had to say was, and this is aimed at real estate people, so kind of keep that in mind. Let's see. Clients who want to delay listing their home until the season begins has become a topic of conversation. Sales and prices tend to peak in the spring and summer, and it's a common request in many markets. Now, again, we've talked about this, and I hate that people just sort of say that because it's not true everywhere. It's absolutely not true in my community. It is a little bit in spring, but it's definitely not. People seem to think that the heart of summer is when the hot season is. And that's not. So you need to make sure to get the ground truth. Don't assume anything about what happens in your local marketplace or the marketplace where your property is based on some national average. Now, according to Jonathan Smoke, who's the chief economist for Realtor.com, and I have to be honest, Jonathan Smoke typically has more cohesive things to say than Mr. Yun, who's the chief economist, I think, for the California Association of Realtors. But he stresses in his latest column that the conventional wisdom isn't correct this winter. I'd argue the conventional wisdom hasn't been true for a few years now. That we saw things, because it used to really be that way. It used to honestly be June, July was typically when you're going to see a lot of these peaks. And here's another little tidbit. While the general assessment in my area, for instance, maybe May, in order to really get a dialed in opinion of what your specific property might be facing, not only do a check on the market when sellers tend to get the most, when the average sales price goes up, where it peaks in the year, also limit it to properties that are approximately the same size as your home with the same bedrooms and baths. Simply because that's really going to tell you something. And while it's not always true, sometimes you'll find that those two things are not happening at the same time. You will find that frequently the number of bedrooms and bathrooms and amenities of a home are catering to a certain kind of buyer who tends to buy more at certain times of the year for whatever reason. So keep that in mind. Don't assume any of these overall general statistics for your larger community apply specifically to your property. Make sure to make it a comparison that's as much apples to apples as possible. Okay. According to Mr. Smoke, at the beginning of 2017, inventory levels plunged to multi-year lows. This is absolutely true. A lot of the markets we've been looking at, a lot of the markets I've been looking at, Sacramento, different areas in Texas, different areas in Arizona have seen decreases in inventory with lower decreases in the number of buyers, meaning a net increase of properties per buyer, right? Because you had a whole lot more inventory was already tough. There was already a lot of competition for buyers to buy properties. Then you saw a much larger drop percentage-wise of inventory with a much, the number that jumps into my head in one area I was looking at was there was a 17% drop in inventory, and I think this is Sacramento, but only a 3% drop in the number of buyers. And how do you calculate the number of buyers that are currently in the market? Well, they're calculating it from the number of closed escrows, most likely. So the idea that actually reflects the real number of buyers isn't really a good one to go on. I'd rather go off of what does Realtor.com show in terms of the number of active searches running for properties in these various areas. And again, in that one, it tended to be flat. Sellers are currently facing very little competition, he says. Mixed with that, buyer demand is abnormally strong for the off season, and I can absolutely state that to be true in my marketplace. I'm getting actually an elevated number of buyer contacts based on past experience. Now, last year was similar. Last year, I saw buyers coming out earlier. I'd say buyers actually have come out this year even a little bit earlier. I was getting more buyer inquiries before the new year than is typical. Last year, I was seeing more buyer inquiries. It sort of took that jump just after the new year rather than before it. Okay, let's see. The climb in mortgage rates that started in October and accelerated in November and December has created a sense of urgency among buyers. I'm not sure that's the case. I've talked to buyers all the time, and when I ask them what their primary concerns are, what is time an issue? Do you want to do this now because you're worried about interest rates? It's not the response I get. So maybe that's true in other areas, not so much with people I'm talking to. It goes on to state that with interest rates largely forecasted to move higher this year, buyers are more in a rush to lock in a low rate sooner. Plus, your sellers may have to worry about lending rates as well. Smoke estimates that 85% of sellers are planning to buy another home after they sell. So here's the best tips for your sellers. Smoke says if you're thinking of selling and buying in 2017, the early bird may get the worm. So I don't think that's a horribly wrong prediction to make. Do I think interest rates are likely to go up? Yeah, I think overall they're going to likely go up. Do I think it's going to be enough to cause a huge sense of urgency? I'm not really sure what that number is. What is the urgency number? We've seen interest rates a whole lot higher than they are now, and it did not create any sense of urgency. Now, this is going back a while when folks maybe were still a little bit more gun shy, but when we had a little bit more of a balanced market, when there was a little bit more inventory to satisfy demand and interest rates were going up, we sure did not see any big surge of folks being moved. My guess is, but I'm not saying that won't happen. I think that the reality is that there is some number that freaks people out, but it's apparently not in the fours because we've had numbers going up into the mid to high fours or projections into those numbers without really much of an oomph, no real push. The thing that's most concerning to me is, again, and I've mentioned this before, all the effort that's being exerted to quote unquote fix real estate is in terms of making it easier and easier to buy property by borrowing, by completely embracing subprime lending again. Different gears are being put in place, different grinders at the front end, but the meat coming out at the back is the same meat we got last time, and that is subprime lending with risky loans, with not a lot of skin in the game, with scenarios where if properties go down 5%. Well, even if they don't go down at all, if they stay the same, these buyers are still underwater because the cost to sell the home would exceed the amount of money they currently have in the game, which would be 3.5%. And with some loans, 0% down. So we're repriming this problem, and that's the concern here. And all the action that's happening is on that lending side. For some bizarre reason, they seem to think things will quote unquote get better by pushing more buyers into the marketplace, when all it'll really do is increase the competition for existing inventory that's already too low, which, as we know, results in higher prices, which is again bad because you're saddling folks who are already at higher risk to having issues, taking on more and more debt. So there you go. Not real sure how this one's going to iron itself out without an increase in inventory. We are starting to see, there was one other article that I came across from the good folks over at Risk Media with the headline, Housing Starts Spring 11.3%, ending 2016 on a high note. Now that's great news. We absolutely need to do this, but it really depends on what kind of starts are we talking about. Now, according to this article, housing starts ended 2016 on a high note, beating expectations and springing 11.3% above the prior month's figure. Privately owned housing starts came in at 1.2 1.26 million, according to the U.S. Census Bureau and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, while single-family starts came in 4% below the prior month's figure, which isn't good. You want those single-family starts to be up there. Starts for units in buildings with 5 units or more came in at 417,000. Privately owned completions came to 1.123 million, 7.9% below the prior month's figure in December, while single-family completions came in 761,000, or 0.9% below the prior month. Completions for units in buildings with 5 units or more came in at 355,000. So, it's a mixed bag. There's really not enough here to be enthusiastic about. We need to see more single-family residential stuff. We're seeing some stuff here that might put a little bit of a dent in it. To be really honest, you don't tend to see the housing starts that you tend to see in the time frame they're talking about here tend to be a little bit depressed, particularly on a month-to-month basis, simply because we're still in the heart of winter. The big number to pay attention to is going to be February, March, and into April to see what happens with housing starts there, because that's going to be a big indicator of what we can expect moving down the road. All right, folks, I do always hope that you are rewarded by spending your valuable time with me with some good insights, good information, some things to get you thinking, or maybe even things that'll help you reach your goals in real estate, whatever they may be. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to y'all next time.